New York basketball is back, baby. Or so we thought. The New York Knicks have been having a really good regular season. One of their best in their history, might I add. Because with the season almost wrapped up, being 63 games in, the Knicks are exactly where people thought they would be as the top 3 seed in the East. Right now, currently at 40 wins and 23 losses. But on the downside of the Knicks, that we thought they'll be slightly better than they are against good teams. Because currently in this season, the Knicks are 0-9 against top 2 seeds in each conference. Starting off with the Boston Celtics losing their first game of the season, 132-109. Losing the Boston Celtics again, 131-104 for the third time, 118-105. Also losing to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the third game of the season, 110-104. Then losing again to the Cavs just a couple weeks ago, 142-105. That's already 0-5 against Eastern Conference teams. So far this season, Knicks have played the Thunder twice, with the first game being 117-107. It looks a lot closer than it was. The Thunder scoring close to 40 points in that fourth quarter, and the second game of the season just coming 1 week after, losing to the Thunder 126-101. Also losing to the Los Angeles Lakers 128-112, and then losing to the Lakers again just a couple nights ago, 113-109. So if you guys have not been counting, that is 9 losses against the top teams in each conference. They cannot beat any contending teams, and they have a negative record against teams above 500. The Knicks are currently 12-16 against teams that are 500 and above. But what is the problem? Why are the Knicks so bad against good teams? It stems from the fact that they hang the offensive hats upon Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, and especially as of lately, Karl-Anthony Towns has not been looking like the all-star form, because Cat at the beginning of the season was averaging 25 points per game, 45% from the 3, 55% from the field, and averaging 14 rebounds. But since the turn of the calendar year, Karl-Anthony Towns is now averaging 19 points per game, 39% from 3, and 49% from the field on only 13 rebounds. Although those are good shooting splits, but clearly it is a regression to how he was playing to start the year. His numbers are dipping, his effort is dipping, his defensive effort was never there to begin with. We expected to add a Cat on the defensive end. The Knicks were supposed to hang their hat on the offensive end. While Karl-Anthony Towns, as we know throughout his entire 10-year career, that when his shot is not falling, he decides just to be a corner sitter and kind of just a prop on the offensive end. His confidence takes a dip, and he tends to not exploit matchups when he has the opportunity. Especially when it comes to good teams and they have a serviceable big on him that's able to contain him, Cat doesn't want to put in the effort to find buckets. He just decides to be a screen setter and a catch and shoot big sitting in the corner instead of trying to find his buckets. And now with Jalen Brunson going down, the New York Knicks are going to have to rely on Karl-Anthony Towns a lot more, and it's going to be a recipe for disaster. They're going to rely on Mikal Bridges, OJ Anunoby, and Josh Hart to create opportunities on the offensive end. That is really concerning, because all year long, I've heard from a great friend of mine who's been telling me all year long that Josh Hart is a negative on the offensive end. I didn't believe him, because I see Josh Hart putting up stat lines with 26 points, 20 rebounds, 12 assists. The other night, he had 16 points and 20 rebounds. Josh Hart's numbers always look great until you really take a deep dive into Josh Hart and what he does on the offensive end. Teams treat Josh Hart as if he's not exist on the offensive end. No one really pays attention to him. They kind of just leave him alone in the corner, leave him alone in the wing. If he's in the dunker spot, they just throw their center on him. It was extremely noticeable when it came down to the Laker game. The Lakers were just not, they were sending 2 at Brunson every time, 2 at Cat every time, and just leaving Josh Hart open and having Josh Hart beat them. That was their recipe. It was to let Josh Hart beat them, and a lot of teams noticed that with the Knicks. When you're playing the Knicks, you let Josh Hart beat you. That's why he grabs so many offensive rebounds, because no one's really paying attention to him. Most teams throw their center onto him and they have it clog up the paint. Makes it harder for Cat and Brunson to score in that painted area, because no one is guarding Josh Hart. It's going to be a recipe for disaster come playoff time. And if Josh Hart gets played off the floor, it's going to be questions being asked about the Knicks and their potential future. Speaking of their future, they gave it all away to the Brooklyn Nets for Mikal Bridges in one of the worst trades of all time, took away 5 first-round picks for the shell of Mikal Bridges on the defensive end. But it is very clear and prevalent that the Knicks were supposed to hang their hat on perimeter defense, having Josh Hart, OJ Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges. But it is clear Mikal Bridges is no longer that defensive player he was out there in Phoenix. Even with a lesser offensive load, He just isn't that player anymore, and he hasn't been in a couple years, and it's time that people realize that. With Cat being their backline help, their defense has just been terrible all year. Even though their offense has hit almost all-time rates, their defense is just right there with it, especially in certain stretches in this season. It seemed unwatchable on the defensive end. It felt like it was just a bucket every time coming down, especially throwing 5 first-round picks at a guy that is clearly not as good as you hoped him to be on the defensive end. Really throws this Knicks team into a bad spot going into the future. But also, you might be thinking, oh, Mitchell Robinson was hurt all year long. Maybe that's why their defense has suffered. You could say that because Mitchell Robinson just came back the last 2-3 weeks, and he's slowly ramping himself back up, but it still hasn't looked great with Mitchell Robinson out there. He won't solve all of their problems. Yes, Mitchell Robinson is a good rim protector on the defensive end, but on the offensive end, he would just slow the game down. Playing Mitchell Robinson and Josh Hart at the same time lessens the Knicks shooting and drops their offensive load significantly, clogging up that paint. And with Thibodeau's being stuck in his old ways, not really putting people in the position where they need to be, is kind of using everyone as individual talents instead of putting all their work together, resulting in the Knicks only being a 3 seed and barely beating good teams all year long. Speaking of Thibodeau, he's been running his players through in the ground all year long. From the Knicks, from the start of the year to basically now, have been running a 7 to 8 man rotation. They've been running a playoff rotation in the middle of the regular season. Knicks having 3 players in the top 10 in minutes per game, in Josh Hart at 1, Mikal Bridges at 2, and OG at 6, which is insanity by Thibodeau. These are role players, and not even your star players getting these amount of minutes. It is the role players getting run into the ground. Come playoff time, if one of those 3 get hurt, the Knicks are going to get really, really bad if OG goes down again for a long period of time. And they also have Cat and Brunson being around the top 20 range in minutes per game. It is time that Thibodeau get out of that old head bag and start embracing the new gen culture. He's too stuck in his ways when it comes to minutes. He refuses to play young guys like Obi Toppin when they had him. He was underutilized. Just for him to go to Indiana and start playing really good basketball, especially in that role the Knicks need now. A high energy athletic forward that can score around the rim and shoot threes. Even though the Knicks' bench only consists of really Deuce McBride, now Mitchell Robinson and Precious Achiuwa, all year long, if he propped up Tyler Kolak, maybe even gave Jacob Toppin some minutes, just to see who can and can't be serviceable role players. Just like how the Grizzlies used Jalen Wells, who was a 2nd round pick, as now is their starting shooting guard and playing really great with them. Maybe it's time that Tibbs gets out of his old ways, especially on the defensive end. Shading or doubling, he really relies on individual talents. And that's you get games where Jason Tatum is seeing Mikal Bridges and seeing an open bucket every time. They're not sending 2 his way and relying on Mikal Bridges to stop Tatum on a 1-on-1. The New York Knicks are exactly who I said they were beginning of the year. They are not a contending team. They are a 2nd round team at best. They're not beating Cleveland. They're not beating Boston in a 7-game series. They have too many holes, too many flaws, and nothing to address them. And on the trade deadline, they made 0 moves to help the team moving forward. They even traded away one of their young guys in Jericho Sims. Even though he hasn't shown much upside, maybe with a lot more reps going, he could have been better throughout the years. But it is unfortunate that Thibodeau refuses to play young players, even though it's going to hurt his team in the long run. And we are really going to see that the identity of this Knicks team without Jalen Brunson. Because the best thing that could have happened to the Knicks is Brunson getting hurt, believe it or not. The well-deserved rest he needs right before the playoffs. This next week or 2 might rejuvenate Brunson into making that playoff push. Who is really surprised the Knicks are a contending team? Because I'm not. Not every team can be a contender. Every team can have a promising years to come. Do the Knicks have any promising years to come? Not really. Their entire core is tied up for the next 3 years minimum. Their main 5 guys is making almost $200 million a year. They have no room to make improvements. They could just sign minimum contracts. They gave OG Anunoby $41 million. This team is wrapped up with large contracts for a long time, and it's gonna hurt them, especially not having any 1st-round picks. Just being able to sign minimum wage guys like Cameron Payne. And you know it's getting bad when PJ Tucker has now just got signed for a 10-day contract with the New York Knicks. I won't be surprised if he ends up playing 35 minutes next game. Yeah, that should Thibodeau away. That's just my thoughts and opinions on this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And if you guys are interested in seeing how good the Pistons are this year, videos on screen now. And as always, go hard on them dudes. Salute.